Well, howdy viewers, welcome back. I got a call from a local road commissioner and he wants me to look at this old Champion motor grader. The original complaint was that the fuel gauge doesn't work, and what he told me on the phone is that you turn the key on and the fuel gauge just pegs, the needle pegs all the way past full. He replaced the sending unit and replaced the gauge in the cluster, and it still has the same problem. So let me catch you guys up a little bit. It finally cleared out in here and I can make a little bit of a video. When we came to work on the machine, the batteries were completely dead. So these are the two batteries right here, 12 volt batteries hooked up in parallel, and we hooked up a battery charger, this battery charger right here, to the batteries to charge them, and it immediately pegged the amp meter on the battery charger and tripped the thermal overload, basically shut the battery charger down. So I figured immediately we had some kind of a major short in the electrical system. So I started snooping around and taking things apart, and let me show you what I found. This right here is the main cable that runs from the alternator to basically back to the battery. So that's your main charge wire. That's a 4 gauge American wire gauge wire right there, and it's completely melted. Melted all the insulation completely off of it for the whole length of the wire. I also found that this wire right here, which is a ground strap running from the starter to the engine block, was completely melted. And this starter has an isolated field winding, so it doesn't ground through the case. I believe that's because the starter motor can be indexed on this mounting flange right here. So they have an additional connection right here for the field winding. And anyway, I'm getting ready to replace these wires, but I still have something majorly wrong, because this is the new cable that I made up right here, and I get a arky sparky whenever I try to touch it to the battery. So here's what I think is going on. I think somebody hooked it up positive ground. So this is two batteries in parallel, so it should be 12 volt negative ground. So if you look at the starter motor here, this big red wire, that's the positive battery cable. It's hooked up to the field winding, and then it runs out to the engine block, to the ground strap. So yeah, if I put a meter on this thing right now and I check from negative battery terminal to this field winding, it's 12 volts. That's the positive right now. So I don't know what's going on. If somebody replaced this starter and accidentally mixed up this connection and this connection, I don't know that much about these machines. If it was 24 volt, I could see it being positive ground, but this is a 12 volt machine. I'm sure of it. The alternator says 12 volt right on it as well, and these battery cables certainly haven't been tampered with, so I think there's more to the story. Anyway, I called the dealership to see if I can get some service information about this, and I'm just waiting for a call back. That's when I decided to get the camera out, so thought it might be something interesting for you guys. Well, I'm just not able to get any service information about this machine. Champion's like an orphan child. It's supposed to be part of Volvo. I called the Volvo dealer. Apparently they're only the dealer for Volvo compactors. So anyway, I called a local shop that does automotive electronics. He's basically an expert about alternators and starters. He said there are no Delco 24SI alternators he's aware of that are positive ground. He said basically anything built in the last 60 years is going to be negative ground, even if it's 24 volt. So that's all I've got to go on for now. Alright, I went ahead and switched the negative cable down here to the field winding and the positive cable up here to the solenoid, and I'm ready to try it. So we'll flip on the main power here. So this is the wire from our alternator. I'm going to you can see where I've already burned it a little bit with the arky sparky. So let's just see what happens here. Grab a fire extinguisher. Yeah, that's a whole lot better. So yeah, I think there's a chance that it might not have killed the alternator. I guess we can hook it back up and start it and see what happens. Okay, well, like I said, I'm not an expert about champion motor graders, but let's see what happens here. Well, the fuel gauge works again. Man, unbelievable. Okay, let me button this thing up, and I think we got it licked. I've never run a motor grader. How do you do it? You have to have 8 hands? There's buttons and levers everywhere in this thing. Okay, well, jack doesn't work, voltmeter doesn't work, water temperature doesn't work, but I've got that one unplugged, so maybe I need to plug those all in and see if we get those back. Maybe we're just missing the ground on that string. But the fuel gauge works. Well, that turned out to be kind of fun. How often do you go out to diagnose a fuel gauge and you find out that the alternator wire has turned itself into a 7-foot long heating element and the machine is actively trying to burn itself down? It's the first one for me. So you guys want the rest of the story? Because there's always more to the story. I was standing there with the guy who's in charge of the machine, and I showed him the 2 wires I found on the starter motor. And I said, you know, this one's supposed to be here and that one's supposed to be over there. And he looks right at me and I could just see a light bulb just go off in his head. And he says, oh yeah, we had the starter motor out of there last week to change a hydraulic hose. I must have hooked him up backwards. So, yeah, crazy. So I have one more thing to say, and that has to do with professionalism and professional courtesy. And it's the way I would handle a job like this. So when a customer calls you to do a job, you got to understand that, especially a repair job, that most likely somebody's already been there before and there's been many hands on the thing. You know, this machine's 40 years old. It ain't our first rodeo. So your job as a professional is to find the problem and fix the problem. And my suggestion is when you find the problem that you keep your trap shut about it, because nobody likes a know-it-all. So when you find the problem, you call the customer, you say, hey customer, this is what's wrong and this is what it's going to take to fix it. You don't fly off the handle and say, oh, some moron screwed this up and I can't believe this was done this way and whoever worked on this is an idiot. You know, no. Most likely the guy who worked on it is the guy who's paying you to fix it. What was done before you got there is none of your concern. Your job is just to fix the problem as it currently exists. Most likely they know they did something wrong and you know nobody wants to be wrong. And most of all, nobody wants to be told that they were wrong. So just keep it under your hat. It doesn't do you any good to fly off the handle about what you found, or you know, it's not going to prevent it from happening again in the future. I guarantee you that. So just do your job, get paid, and move on to the next one. So I guess that's it. Kind of an unusual video. Not a whole lot of meat to it, but I thought it was interesting, so I probably will post it. Thanks for watching.